and a huge warm welcome to my guest, Emily Elsworth, who I'm very excited to chat to about accessibility for neurodivergent people of all ages. But before we head into that, I just want to tell you a little more about our guest. Emily is a late diagnosed autistic woman. Prior to her diagnosis, she had quite a varied career from working with museum education, training as primary school teacher, and delivering peer support. She now works as an access consultant, supporting museums to make them more accessible spaces for neurodivergent people. Doing this means she can use her lived experience both personally and professionally in an area that she is incredibly passionate about. This sounds incredible, and I can't wait to hear more. So I'd love to welcome Emily to the episode today. How are you doing, Emily?
I'm doing good, thank you, Lucia. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for coming on and speaking to us today about such an important topic that I think will actually really help a lot of people, not just within kind of the museum sector, but actually transferring that across into lots of different situations in life, I guess. I want to start by talking about the fact that you had an autism diagnosis quite late on in life. What led you to seek a diagnosis?
Firstly, it was quite a long, like I don't like the word journey, but it was quite a long journey to actually getting the diagnosis.
Yeah.
So I'd been in and out of the mental health system since I was 11. Probably like people like noticed I was struggling with school, probably from the minute people I had to go to school. I was about to say people put me in school, but like legally that's where I had to be. So
Yeah.
like my parents were just doing what they were being told. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and I got by okay when I was at sort of primary school, but it was when I was 11 and I went to secondary school that I just went, I can't do this. This is too much.
Yeah.
Or as I laugh, that's kind of like my way of like dealing with what was probably like a really horrific situation.
Yeah.
Um, so that's probably worth saying quite early on. But yeah, it was all the way through secondary school, kind of in and out of different mental health services, university, different mental health services, and then as you kind of said in the introduction, I bounced around careers quite a lot. So I did trainee teaching, and then I qualified as a teacher 10 years ago now,
Okay.
and never actually went into teaching.
Oh, really?
I pretty much I there is a photo that exists of me from my last ever teaching placement where I just look so ill,
Yeah.
because I was just well, what I probably now know is I was probably burnt out,
Yeah.
um, and I just thought, "Do you know what, I can't I can't do this." So I went straight into museums outside of doing that degree, and then kind of moved around. Never really had a second anniversary anywhere. Sometimes didn't have a like a 6 month anniversary anywhere in a job.
Really?
It's moved around a lot. And then at the end of 2019, so yeah, it was like the week before Christmas 2019, um, I had been referred to the should probably have done like a like slight content one. So I went to the I was referred to the community mental health team in my local area because my GP was like, do you know what, we literally don't know what else to do with you. I'd done cognitive behavioral therapy more
Okay.
times than I can remember, and yeah, loads of people always say how many times, like I don't know, a big number
Do you
essentially.
know what? It's funny you say that. Just kind of interjecting quickly there because I've tried CBT a couple of times. So I got my autism diagnosis last year, and I've tried CBT a couple of times now, and I found it really challenging to access. And the last time that I did, the therapist said to me, CBT isn't neurodivergent friendly. And it isn't necessarily the best choice. It works for some people, but there are certain elements to it that don't transverse across as well to help neurodivergent individuals. And I thought maybe that's why it hasn't worked for me. So it's interesting that you say that as your experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do know, obviously, like you say, like everyone is different and it will work for some people and for others it won't. And I think I know like that it can be adapted to be like slightly more neurodivergent friendly,
Okay.
and that it can be more successful in that way. But yeah, absolutely. It's I think because it's like it was well, certainly in my experience, it was like the go-to if that's where you were like referred to. So I think when that didn't work, my GP just went, oh, okay, don't know what else to do. So well, the next step is community mental health. And I spent an hour with them, and luckily one of the people on their team used to work for the local autism diagnostic service. And after an hour, they said that we had an hour long discussion. And they called me back in for a second discussion and said, "Why is nobody like told you that you're potentially autistic?" And I was like, "Because I'm not." Um, because not like in a bad way, like absolutely not. I just think because I'd done autism training over and over again
Oh, I
when I was
see.
at uni and when I was doing jobs, I'd done autism training, and I just kind of it was always kind of like a one size fits all kind of idea of what being autistic is, which is just not the case. We're all very different and very unique. Um, so I just none of this relates to me. But they said, oh, we really think. At the time, they thought, oh, it would be useful for you to if you pursue education again. By this point, I was 26, and I was like, I'm not probably going to pursue education again. Um, don't really want to relive that for a second time. Um, um, so they said we really think you should go for an autism diagnosis. And I just wanted some answers as to
Yeah.
um why my life had been how it was up until that point, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, getting a diagnosis through the pandemic probably wasn't how I would have planned for it. I actually had my first diagnostic appointment on the 24th of March 2020,
Oh,
which
wow.
everyone will know as the first full day of national lockdown.
Was that
So
a
yeah,
face-to-face appointment?
it was meant to be. It was
Right.
changed very last minute to on the phone. So it wasn't the most accessible experience. I think I was on the phone for like two and a half to 3 hours.
Oh,
Uh,
gosh.
it was just long. It was
That
long.
is long.
Yeah, and then got the official diagnosis in the November. So I suppose overall it was quite quick. Sort of referred in December, diagnosed in November. I know that that is not the case for a lot of people. And yeah, the wait lists are just too long. But
Mm.
yeah, so I think that I just pursued it because I wanted those answers. I think
Yeah.
it was a long process to get to that point, 27 years. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm glad I did.
yeah, I think I mean, like you say, it's such a long waiting list for people. But I think there generally tends to be, from my experience of people that I've spoken to, there tends to be two camps of people. The people that don't really want to seek or actively seek a diagnosis. It doesn't matter to them. They're not interested in kind of putting a name to anything. And then other people on the other side that are actively seeking that out because they want some answers to potentially how they feel or how they've experienced life and things like that. I mean, I know for me, it was going through my daughter's assessment that really highlighted it for me because it shone a light on a lot of similarities between her experience and her behaviors and mine, and the fact that her therapist turned around and said to me, do you think maybe you want to explore this? You're showing some characteristics. So that was a kind of mix. But I think there's very distinctly two types of person, isn't there, for that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, and absolutely. I know some people will just prefer to go, do you know what? I'd rather self-identify. I don't want to put myself through this. There's not actually, and actually for some people, it might actually not be safe to have that kind of label and thinking
Yeah.
about kind of intersectionality around autism and yeah, absolutely. There are definitely those kind of like you say, two thoughts really of, I'm not going to or I am actually going to pursue it and actually both are valid. I mean, I know they'll say, oh, you need the diagnosis to get the support. No, no.
No.
Um, definitely not. I mean, I know people will push and say you do need the diagnosis, but yeah, the support limited as it is. So, as you'll know yourself, from both perspectives as of being a parent and neurodivergent yourself, it's yeah, there's not a lot of support out there, but I will say that yeah, you don't necessarily need the diagnosis to be going for the support. Um,
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So, thinking about kind of your life before diagnosis, if we can, are there any kind of key experiences or challenges that you experienced and now in hindsight you kind of understand them almost through the lens of autism now?
Yeah, I think very much like social situations,
Yeah.
definitely. Or like experiences. Like I was talking to my mum the other day about a family holiday when I must have been 14, I want to say. And it was I genuinely can't remember if this was the exact place, but I just remember this actual event of going in and they didn't tell you what was going to happen. You just went into this room that was quite bright and then it suddenly went dark and the doors closed and you were like sat down and it became like a simulation of what it was like to be in a lifeboat, which is
Okay.
if you had told me that, great, that would have been some good warning, but like I just panicked so much
Yeah.
because it was just sensory overload and kind of the uncertainty of it and it all happening quicker than I anticipated.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just remember like my parents being like, "Why are you so freaked out by this? Like it's not a big deal." And I'm like, "But it is a big deal." And actually, when we were talking about it the other day, you could just see my mum's face being like, "Oh,
Oh,
maybe we shouldn't have." Sort of thought that that was such a bad thing, or when I think back about like how I've like handled friendships and things like that and yes, since getting my own diagnosis I have lost friends, like that has happened because I don't think people have necessarily liked the open me or the more open me, shall I say.
really?
um and yeah, that hurts, but like if that's how people want to be, that's how people are going to be. Um and yeah, I think like in school, like I would come home and be like, I can't do my homework. And it'd be like, why can't you do your homework? Well, because so and so was talking behind me, so I've no idea what the teacher was saying. I was just so distracted. It literally says in one of my school reports, Emily needs to learn not to be distracted by noise. It's like, how did you miss that? Like, how?
How can you not learn not to be distracted by noise?
Yeah, like
Wow, that's a statement.
that is a statement. I'd love to think if I went through the education system now that it would be different, but I don't know. I don't see in your face sort of suggesting. But yeah,
I don't know how. I don't. That's baffled me. I mean, I wish I could learn to not be distracted by noise. I'd probably get so much more done, but
I, I
that's
know.
ludicrous.
Yeah, a day would be so much easier if it was just like no noise like at all. That would just, I mean, I've moved rooms today because like the sound of the fridge has been really distracting. And my neighbour getting their motorbike out has been really distracting. And I know sometimes I should just put my noise cancelling headphones on, but sometimes I'm just going to try and move to a different room first and see if we can solve this. But it does mean it's a bit like musical chairs sometimes when I'm working from home, but it's fine.
Did you did you find it easy? You spoke a moment ago about becoming more open and accepting yourself, and as a subsequence of that, you lost some of your friends. Did you find it easy to kind of embrace that almost new identity, I guess, of dropping, I guess it's dropping the mask, isn't it?
Um, that's a good question. I think I still, I mean, it's been 4.5 years now, and I think I do still to an extent mask quite a lot. I ironically found it quite easy to start with because I was like, oh, this is new information. It was almost like quite impulsive. And I was just like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I've got this new diagnosis. I can tell, which again is privileged to be able to tell and shout it as much as I kind of did. Um, and I think that I originally, I started trying to be more open and things. And I think that my guard went up a little bit once I saw how some people were reacting to it. And I think I've just learned now to be more me in spaces where I feel more comfortable, which is probably why I like
Yeah.
museums because that is a space where I feel comfortable. And yeah, I think yeah, you have negative experiences, and I think it does make you reflect and go, actually, can I mask around these people? Does this feel right? I think I'm still learning by going, oh, I can't do this because actually that would be really overwhelming. Like a social event with people I don't know probably is going to be too much,
Mm.
and things like that. And like planning, um, escape routes probably sounds like the worst thing possible, but for events where I'm just thinking I need a plan if this is too much. Um, yeah, going into things very planned. So there's definitely that element of masking, that kind of scripting it of how we get out. Um, I don't know if this is answering your question, so I've gone
Yeah.
off on my own little tangent here. My brain's like, go back to the point, Emily.
No, it's really
Um,
interesting to hear about the kind of strategies that you've put in place for yourself to cope in those situations because and you did kind of answer the question, how easy is it to embrace that new kind of openness, and it's easy in some situations where you feel comfortable and safe and able to do so, but in other situations you might have to put these strategies in place to help you cope.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, like, professionally, I think because obviously the nature of what I do is sharing my lived experience through work. So professionally, it's probably made it easier in those situations. I think it's people that have known me pre-diagnosis that's maybe a little bit harder to sometimes go, well, you know that thing I used to do? Well, now actually I can't do that thing. And I think people do go, why could you do it in 2018, but you can't do it in 2025? And it's like, well,
Mm.
I probably couldn't do it in 2018. I was probably doing it to massive detriment to myself. Um, but yeah, yeah, the people around me now are like, yeah, I do feel safe, like being around them and being more of myself around them now. So yeah, I think it's getting there. It's again, I don't want to say the word journey. I think we should just do a tally of how many times has it's word that she's just said she doesn't like.
It is though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a journey that we go on. But I see what you're saying. I mean, it is used a lot, isn't it? I mean, it's lovely to hear that you are in a workspace that you feel comfortable and confident to be in, and not just that, but to actually use that platform to talk about it and to embrace it more, which I think is a really healthy way of being, and a healthy situation to be in, to be surrounded in that in your workplace as well. How do you think your own neurodiversity has helped you in the field that you work in? Are there kind of strengths and perspectives that come with being autistic that are actually a really positive thing in your field?
I suppose that kind of neurodivergent side of it seeing those kind of details. So I think I will see things that maybe others wouldn't pick up on, thinking like from a sensory perspective of like so I do access audits and I will go around and I'll point out things and people go, oh, I never would have thought of that. Like I spend so much of my time talking about hand dryers. It's like I never thought that's where my life would end up is talking about hand dryers. But I
you're
do. The
you're an expert
debate,
in hand dryers now.
absolutely, the debate between paper towel and hand dryer is
what's
up
what's your
there.
recommendation?
Oh, yeah. uh, Paper towel. Or actually, I would say give a choice, to be honest, is
Yeah.
my recommendation is have both there as the choice. Um, yeah, but don't like put them directly underneath paper towels underneath a hand dryer. It's not a good option. Would be my massive top tip is don't
Yep.
put them right next to each other. Because that's, I mean, paper towels all over the floor for a start, but then the added unexpected noise and
Yes.
sensation from a hand dryer. Um, but yeah, I think it's that picking up on things that I don't think other people necessarily would, and that kind of level of um experience to just be able to say, actually, this isn't something that's massively accessible. This is how you could approach it. And I think because in my own life, going back to that kind of escape route thing, because I always have like a plan A, B, C, I can always think of like different ways to approach something, as well, which does seem to help and kind of yeah, it's beneficial. If we go actually plan A is never going to work. That's just not going to work for our site. I go, okay, let's try plan B then, if that's not going to work. Um, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what does a typical day or a typical project look like for you as an access consultant for museums?
So it varies quite a lot depending on kind of what it is. It could be a typical day, could be kind of delivering a training session, which can be in person or online, depending on travel. It's ironic, I really love doing in-person training, but
Really?
because I struggle so much with the traveling because of
Oh,
co-occurring conditions that I have, and kind of trying to work out where I need to be. Um, yeah, it has to be somewhere that's quite straightforward, sadly, for me to get to. So it could be delivering a training session, looking at kind of a short introduction to autism or neurodivergence in general, and then looking at kind of some case studies of lived experience and kind of identifying barriers, which I always say the phrase by accident of those are some great barriers. I'm like, no, barriers are never great. It's terrible. And then looking kind of at top tips, or it could be going to a site visit and doing an audit. So kind of going round, looking at the spaces, what's working in terms of access, what's not working.
okay.
Sometimes it can be a combination of doing the audit and then actually coming back and doing training later on or some mentoring. At the minute, I'm doing a lot of work around because I've got a Developing Your Creative Practice grant from the Arts Council.
Amazing.
So I am, I want to say five, no, 6 months into it. Started in December. No, that's 5 months. By the time this goes out, it might be 6 months.
Who knows what month it is anymore?
Who knows what month it is? It's, yeah. I know what day of the week it is, and that's about as good as we're going to get, I think, from me. So that's kind of looking at new ways of working and developing more of a consultancy offer. So it's about to start working with some museums and trying new ways of working kind of over the summer to launch in. I'm not going to give a definite date. I'm going to say by the end of 2025 because I keep saying definite dates and then I can't work my own deadlines. I need other people to set me deadlines, I think is the reality of
Right,
the
I'll check in with you at the end of 2025 then. There you
okay. On New
go.
Year's Eve.
That's
Have
it. Keep you
you done it?
accountable.
Yeah, that is one thing that I do miss, like from not working within one organization all the time, is the accountability
Yeah.
of having that other person to be like, oh, you need to do this by this date. So I am starting to ask people more when we start a new project, like when exactly
Mm.
does this need doing by?
I think as well, like I've heard lots around accountability coaching. This is a new thing that I've kind of come across, and actually, I can really see the value in it because, like yourself, like I work from home, and yes, I do have teams around me, and I speak to people every day, but having that kind of accountability of somebody going, right, I'm going to check in with you next week and see if you've done what you said you're going to do, because I think sometimes we get really busy, don't we? And then you kind of, I don't know about you, but I can go off on a tangent. I can go down a rabbit hole, and I'll spend hours working on something. Go, oh, actually, that could have waited. I need to go back to do what I had planned to do. So, I think accountability is underrated sometimes of how important it can be. And I don't know if that is a neurodivergent thing or if that's just a general everyday working thing.
Yeah, I mean, I like you say, like I have heard more. I don't know if it's because I speak to more neurodivergent people, kind of within the realm of what I do, kind of online in particular. So I do find that a lot of people are like, oh, I really do need accountability. So it's something that's really really important. Yeah, I did once. One of my managers in a previous role would put a calendar above my desk that had every project and every deadline on it, and it was color coded based on when I needed to be really anxious
Love
about if
it.
I'd
Oh,
not done it, or color coded on you really don't need to be thinking about it. It'd be good if you were thinking about it.
yeah.
Like, and if there was no color at all, it just meant do not be thinking about this right now because it's 6 months down the line and you've got four other projects. Um, so yeah, things like that. That was a good manager. Who did that? I need somebody to just create. Well, essentially need me to create that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, visual, very visual, which was
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah, visual
Yeah.
accessibility. I don't know if that's a thing, but it is now.
Is now. Yep. Trademark it.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, through the consulting that you have done, what are some of the most common barriers that you have seen for neurodivergent individuals within kind of museum spaces?
I think one of the kind of really big things is the maybe sometimes the assumption that it's like that one size fits all, that all neurodivergent people are the same. And we're not, like our needs are different, our kind of presentations may be different. Um, and sometimes it's that kind of, oh, we'll do, and this is not to say that these events are bad, because for some people these are uncomfortable. Is that kind of, it's everyone who's autistic, for example, would need lights up and sound down. And sometimes actually that isn't what we need. Sometimes it's that we need a quiet time to visit. So we might just want to visit essentially after the school groups have gone. Because that is from my experience when museums are the quietest. Or it's that kind of the thought that we, want to come and only visit at 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, I think Sam actually mentioned it in her podcast of doing these kind of relaxed days as opposed to just like an hour in the morning. It's that idea that we don't want to be just hidden away from
Yeah.
people. It'd be nice if there were kind of longer days. So I think it's sometimes assumptions around kind of what we maybe need, and actually maybe talking to us more, there'd be more information about kind of what a wider neurodivergent audience maybe does need. I think sometimes it's signage, finding your way around. I'm gonna not just say museums, anywhere. As somebody who gets lost easily,
Yeah. Me
um,
too.
just signage is.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize that's probably like a longer term thing that needs fixing, but you can't just put paper signs up everywhere because that doesn't look great.
Post-it notes on all of the doors and everything.
But just help us to navigate a site a little bit better. Because I know you can always hopefully go and approach a member of staff, but sometimes that's an additional barrier to have to go up and speak to a member of staff. Because I think sometimes like customer service and access sometimes do slightly clash, like the whole thing of coming through the door and I'm sure everyone is told to immediately greet the people that have come through the door, but actually sometimes just give me a beat. You
Yeah.
know, I'm just trying to acknowledge what space I'm in first. Because it's always I'll put together like what I can see, what I can smell, what I can hear. Um, Maybe not necessarily, but like all the I was about to say taste, but probably not what I can taste. If I can taste the air, probably will be leaving quite quickly.
Then it's
That
probably not a
might
museum you're in.
no, that needs seriously looking at if I can taste the air.
But
I'm
just the
still
senses, all of
yeah,
your sensory experience, yeah.
yeah. It's kind of like building up a sensory picture of where I am
Yeah.
is and that transition into a new space. Is probably kind of what I'm focusing on. So it'd be good, like if there was a beat before kind of
Hmm.
welcoming people. Um, but yeah, that kind of thing of, oh, if you need help, come and ask a member of staff. Actually, sometimes if there was signage that just said, this way to, these are where the accessible toilets are. This is where kind of the changing places toilet is if you have one. Um, More places do need to have them. This is where our quiet space is if you have one. This is where our handling objects are.
Hmm.
Um, or even just this is where the stairs or the lift are. I did recently visit a museum and got very, very lost and just went round in circles. I think
Really?
I eventually went, just want to get out now.
Oh,
I don't know if anyone that worked at the museum saw me, but I was very definitely like, I am done now. I can't do this.
and I'm sure that's not the feeling that the museum wants their
No,
customers to be leaving feeling like. You want to
yeah.
leave on a high and kind of reflecting on what you've experienced there, not that you're on the verge of having a breakdown because you can't find your way out of the building.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the irony that it also took me 45 minutes to get into the building, so the fact that I then couldn't get out again.
Where did you go? Obviously,
I'm not going to
don't
name it on here,
name.
but
It sounds like Fort Knox trying to get in and out.
um, yeah, I had a map as well, and I did my best, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, um, but yeah, but maybe that's the other thing, like to consider as a common barrier is that actually a lot of access information, predominantly within like the museum and heritage sector, is aimed at neurodivergent children. And
Okay.
as somebody who wasn't diagnosed until I was 27, I mean the irony that every it was like young people, it ends when you're 25. The thing I was most upset about was like, oh, I'm old. Uh, like, and I'm not old by any stretch of the imagination, even 4 years later. But um there's a lot of things that actually would be suitable for all ages, but like visual stories that say sit down with your parent to read this. I did go to, I mean, I'm not saying that children wouldn't sit down with their parents and read it, but actually for me as an adult, well, my
Yeah.
mum was interested for a start. Like, she was like, "You can read that yourself." Uh,
Yeah.
um, so I think, yeah, it's understanding actually that if you're going to mention access around neurodiversity or neurodivergence, that actually making sure it's suitable for all ages. Have you got backpacks that are for all ages? Have you got resources that are for all ages? Um, yeah, just making sure that it's across somebody's lifespan, and quite open and available for people to use, because actually there'll be people that don't know that they're neurodivergent,
Yeah.
and actually or don't want to disclose that they're neurodivergent, and that will benefit them as well.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I've probably got
Yeah.
it top tips as well as barriers, but sort of intermingled them
Yeah.
together.
No,
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because I didn't even consider that you think about, widening access and things like that. And I've heard some great stories and had some great discussions around the things that are available, like the backpacks that you've just touched upon and the maps and things like that. But you're right, they are geared very much towards the younger generation. So what about those people that are later diagnosed, or adults just visiting, adults with children who, are all neurodivergent? I didn't even consider that element of, is everything accessible to all ages? I think that's a really important aspect. And I imagine it's an important part of the work that you do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand like why, having worked within museum education, like I fully understand why a lot of it is initially aimed at children. It's because like if you think of a family audience, a school's audience, that is probably the biggest audience that you have through the door. So I fully get why it's kind of aimed at that kind of age range. It like yeah, it would just be nice to see it broadening as kind of more understanding around access comes out. Um, yeah, around those
Yeah.
things about like actually having something that's relevant for the parent who might be
Yeah.
neurodivergent as well, or other family member or friends that are visiting that are. I quite often go to museums with my friends, and it's like, well, is there something for me there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can completely see that. Obviously, you've touched on a few things there in terms of some changes that museums can do in order to be more inclusive. Are there anything else that you think that can help with that impactful changes that museums can do that are maybe a lot smaller than some of the big things that need happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, it sounds like this is going to be a big thing, but like a small thing is listen to the feedback you've already got around access. Like, what are people already saying? Like, there's Ewan's guide where people can, put reviews on, and that's kind of disability in general. So it's not just specifically neurodivergence. But listen to the feedback you've already got. Like, what changes could you do? Like, could you, my brain has just gone blank. That's not a good sign. Could you just put a sign on the front desk saying that, that something, there'll be a noise at a loud time? I think shout about what you're already doing. I think that's one thing that no one does like particularly well is shout about what you're already doing. Could you just post on social media once a month saying actually our site is doing this?
Yeah.
Is it, is it something that you can go out and talk to your local community groups about? You're probably already working with those community groups, and listening to those people's lived experiences, and making sure there's choice.
Yeah.
Like going back to hand dryers and paper towels. It won't always be hand dryers and paper towels. I'd love there to be a day when that's not what I talk about so much of my time. You
They
going to the toilet.
represent a bigger story. They're used as a representation.
You do. Yeah. When you got home after the end of a work day, you think, actually, hold on, what have I talked about today? Oh yeah, paper towels and hand dryers. That's gonna be what I'm like known for. Like when I've stopped doing this, it's like
You're the hand dryer girl.
I'm a hand dryer girl. Oh, but yeah, just thinking like really kind of small, listening to that feedback, talking about what you're already doing, you know, things like could you just put together a really simple visual story of like this is what the galleries look like, this is
Yeah.
what our members of staff might be if they wear a uniform. I'm not saying photograph every member of staff, um, because not everyone likes having their photo taken for a start, so maybe
Yeah.
don't do that. Just seeing what kind of a uniform might look like, and just so people can plan. Um, yeah, and I think training, making sure that there's training and not to be biased, but getting somebody in with lived experience
Yeah.
to deliver training is really, really important. Um, just so that it's coming and you can understand the why of why you're doing what you're doing when it's kind of coming from that lived experience perspective. Um, yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, thinking of museums that might be just starting their journey towards looking to become more accessible and inclusive, what advice would you give to them? Is that something that you would recommend an audit in the first instance, or how is the best way to start if they're thinking about it?
Yeah, I think an audit is a really good place to start, kind of looking at what is working well, what could be improved, and some like recommendations is a really good starting point because you can see what um what is working, what you need to be focusing on. And different people do access audits in different ways. So kind of finding who is the best fit for you for doing an access audit is a really good starting point. And yeah, I think just finding what baseline you're at, I suppose, is a really good starting point. And actually, there's a quote that a few people have said to me now is not letting perfect get in the way of good, which that is the first time I've been able to actually remember that quote and articulate it. It's by
Well
people
done.
to me so many times. I think that would be a message for me to museums is don't let something being perfect get in the way of not doing it. So if you've got a visual story and it's saved on somebody's computer, get it out there, show people what it looks like. If you're planning on running an event but you're not entirely sure, put it on. Put it on. That's all you can do and listen to the feedback. Just try. I often say in training things with access are sometimes trial and error,
Yeah.
which is an awful phrase, but it's true. Because sometimes things will work and sometimes things won't.
Yeah.
Um, and you'll never know unless you try. So I think an access audit, but if you've already got things that you really want to try, or maybe a lower cost as well, if you've already got something there, have a go and just see what you can do. The worst thing you can do for access is nothing at all. You've like
Mm.
just do something. Please do something. I think would be because they're amazing. I'm very biased around museums, but they are incredible spaces. And but outside of museums as well, any organization just do something to show that you are making progress with access. It's never going to be something that's fully achieved um or fully accessible because that's not a thing. Because everyone's got different access needs and that's just how it is. Um but yeah, taking those steps and just continually reviewing would be kind of my starting point. Just I suppose my thing for people starting is just do something.
Do it. Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice, because as someone who loves research and someone who really sees the value in trying things and then evaluating it and then going again, that's the reason we have research, is to pilot things, find out what worked, find out what didn't, adapt and go again. And I know there are lots of kind of entrepreneurs out there that talk about failing and how important failing is because of the lessons that we learn from it. And I think you can so easily get wrapped up in that, oh, it's not ready to do it yet. It's not ready. I need to just tweak this. I need to do that. I mean, I'm guilty of this myself. And sometimes you do just have to just do it, see what happens, and then go from there. So I think that's actually spot on advice. I think that's a really good thing to think about going forward. So if people are listening and maybe they're thinking, oh, actually, this is really good. I'd love to work with Emily. How do they kind of get in contact with you? Are you looking to work with people? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always kind of open to working with new places and new people. So the best place to probably find me is my website, which is, well, I have to say it slowly because I always get it wrong, is www.emilyautism.co.uk. And I can send you the link afterwards, Lucy, as well.
Yeah.
So you've got it. So that's probably the best place because of the contact form or a link to book a chat with me as well on there as well. So yeah, if you are looking to look at your access around neurodivergence, yeah, please do get in touch.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'll put links underneath the episode anyway. So for any listeners who are listening who might suspect that they are autistic, what advice would you offer them about seeking a diagnosis and that self-discovery that you went through?
I think it would be kind of taking your time around it. I feel like if I was to go back and do it all again, I think I rushed a lot of things. Like very much was like, yeah, we'll do the diet, we'll send off the form, we'll do this, we'll do that. I went self-employed, kind of like started setting up a business 3 days after getting a diagnosis. I was
Wow.
also diagnosed with ADHD in January. I should probably say at this stage. I don't know if it's become obvious. Um, um, but yeah, I think taking your time, work out what works for you. If you can, ask for support to see what works for you. Because I think once you are in that kind of process of getting a diagnosis and self-discovering, everyone expects you to suddenly be an expert on everything you need, and it'll be, oh, and this isn't to put people off. There will be a lot of, tell us what your access needs are, what can we do to help? And actually, those questions are amazing. But when the answer that I still sometimes give is, I don't know,
Yeah.
because I might not know what on earth I'm walking into, for example.
Yeah.
I think take time to work out what it is that works for you, whether a diagnosis is something you want to pursue, kind of look at what wait times are in your area, things like that. Look at, if you are employed, what support can your employer offer? Um, yeah, I think just take your time with it. I think I did everything too quickly. And in hindsight, would have done things slightly slower. Yeah, I mean, again, with the shouting from the rooftops, that's autistic straight away. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was anonymous on Instagram until I accidentally posted a photo of my own face and couldn't work out how to take it off.
Oh no.
So that sort of ruined the anonymity of the situation. So yeah, my advice would just be just really take your time. Like it is a huge thing to learn, like that, you know, I mean, for me, it was like I've been working against my brain for 27 years. So that was a lot of things to process. And
Yeah.
said the other day, we were still having conversations going, oh, do we think that was because you were autistic? Yes. Um, yeah, and that happens a lot. Yeah, that's a really long-winded way of saying take your time. I will
Love
stop
it.
now.
No, I love it. I love it. So just to finish off, you've given a few bits of amazing advice today. So you might not have anything left for this final question. But because Recap is all about embracing everyone and making everyone feel at home and part of the supportive community, I do ask all guests to have a think of one piece of advice or an empowering message to give the listeners to kind of finish off and help share that love and support. So if you could say one thing to help even just one person, is there anything that you'd like to say?
I think, and I wish more people said this to me, is don't compare yourself to other people. You're on your own, and I'm about to say the word again, you're on your own journey, your own path. And just I think you do you is probably not the most like that's an awful way of wording it, but kind of do what you need
Yeah, it's
to
true.
do and don't kind of compare yourself to other people, especially on social media, because that's probably a very short snapshot of what people are doing. So yeah, try not to compare yourself to other people, and you can do what you need to do in your own time and in your own space.
Brilliant. Emily, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us, sharing your lived experience, your expertise in the field. And I am definitely going to be chasing you up. New Year's Eve 2025, I am going to be chasing you up and asking you how accountable you are in terms of the things you need to achieve. So be waiting for that email from me.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that email.
It's going in my diary. Emily, it's been wonderful to speak to you. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Lucy. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.